I want this series and channel to be first and foremost a celebration of games and the powerful ways they can affect us. For that reason, I don't like to focus on games that fail to do so. But as an introductory series to themes in games, I think it's necessary to see how an otherwise good game can fail to be memorable and impactful due to mismessaged and contradictory themes. So we're going to be taking a deep dive into 2018's Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the latest title from longtime Tomb Raider developer Crystal Dynamics, focusing on Lara's struggle to avenge her father and an epic journey throughout Central and South America to stop the villainous Trinity organization from remaking the world. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is an excellent example of a game with very strong aesthetics and strong mechanics, but doesn't bring it together with its text into a unified experience. While many of its themes are well conveyed, they are often only half realized, or outright in conflict with other themes in the game. A disclosure, I was the project manager for the Xbox One version of the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition reboot, and worked closely with Crystal Dynamics to bring their franchise to the next-gen console. Spoilers ahead for the entirety of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Much like Lara, Crystal Dynamics has an obsession, creating the most beautiful art the games industry has ever seen. They're the industry leaders in creating flawless visual spaces in video games, both in action and when you take a breath just to look around. For that reason, we're going to start by looking at the aesthetic themes of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is where I believe the developers spent the bulk of their time and budget, and that reflects the importance it put on the art in the game and what it should mean to the player. I can honestly say that no other developer put such careful attention to detail at a premium as Crystal Dynamics. It's clear that an enormous amount of research, iteration, and polish went into creating the regions that Lara visits.
This is incredible.
While many studios ensure that their cinematics are well composed, Crystal Dynamics put the crafts of proper framing and juxtaposition into every single camera placement, even during gameplay. Not only does this serve an important mechanical function, guiding the player to the next platform using light and color, but it makes moment-to-moment gameplay look like a masterfully shot film, even in the many set-piece chase and escape sequences, with the player narrowly avoiding hazards, scampering up walls, escaping floods, and dodging arrows. In benchmark-setting action sequences, the virtual cinematographer keeps pace, ensuring you always have an epic view of the action taking place. As mentioned, almost the entire game takes place in Mexico and Peru. I claim no particular knowledge of either region, and certainly can't speak to the accuracy of the mythos that Lara recites so frequently.
Inscription says, the silver box of Ishal. That must be what's in the hidden city. This is a Maya myth. It says the box will summon the god Kukulkan.
But I can attest the amount of work that went into the creation of these spaces. Game developers have mastered ways to obfuscate the need for one-off art models and animations when it's convenient, but Crystal Dynamics takes no shortcuts. All that said, it's clear that the art direction couldn't resist playing up some common tropes of the region. You'll see dozens of bodies on spikes, and be caught on many yourself. Endless human sacrifices, both in action and after the fact. Along with a near obsession with claustrophobic tunnels, the game can't help but get caught up in the associations this culture has with horror in the Western world. There's an interesting focus on Lara Croft blending into this culture. As part of the storyline, she frequently changes outfits in order to appear inconspicuous among the locals of the town or village that she's visiting. On its own, this might show some deference for local customs, and the inevitable distress that seeing a white outsider might cause to an otherwise isolated populace. Which is why it's so strange that Shadow of the Tomb Raider has such an unusual relationship with language. Despite Lara clearly speaking the local languages, even being able to decipher ancient dialects, she only speaks English in the game. Even stranger, all the other characters seem to switch between English and Spanish without a hitch. Why is a drunk Mexican telling a disguised Lara to scram in English?
Hey, get out of my office.
Sorry.
Close the door when you leave.
Right.
Why don't guards notice the disguised Lara is saying the passphrase in an upper-class British accent?
Innocent eyes will blink at dawn when weakness falls away.
You may enter.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider wants its aesthetic themes to encompass respect for these cultures, and acknowledge their value to real people living today, fueling the player and Lara's desire to protect these things from the evil Trinity's plans. But it frequently undercuts these values with a confusing approach to language, and by tightly integrating these cultural artifacts with horror.
Look at all this.
This horror is most prevalent in a group called the Yashil. Teased as violent boogeymen for most of the game, when you finally encounter these seemingly feral creatures, you'll spend 10 minutes shooting them with your newly acquired shotgun, and likely be brutally murdered by them a few times too. Nothing's quite as dehumanizing as putting someone on the other end of a powerful weapon your player has just picked up for the first time. Much later, in the game's finale, the Yashil leader is portrayed as a sort of counterpart to Lara, but the audio and animation portrays them far closer to disposable orcs than human beings with self-determination or conscious reasoning. The Yashil hew far too close to the tales of savages that Western colonizers would tell their children to keep them from wandering off. On the topic of Western colonizers, let's look at the Croft family. Shadow of the Tomb Raider includes a very revealing flashback sequence for Lara, taking us back to her childhood minutes before she finds her father killed. Two things are immediately clear. Lara Croft has always been Lara Croft, even as a child. She even has her instinct ability in her flashback, which is a cool bit of mechanical storytelling. And two, the Crofts are fabulously wealthy, with at least her father being obsessed with the collection of relics from ancient cultures around the world. This is a man who keeps an ossuary of human remains in his study, along with many other antiques. This is not a family that respects other cultures. It's a family that collects them and uses them to empower themselves. This is something that the game's villain, Dominguez, recognizes early and kills Lara's father to stop him from revealing his isolated tribe to the world. The story of Shadow and the Tomb Raider is pockmarked by MacGuffins, but manages to stay coherent, minus a detour into rebel monarchy politics, and benefits from strong characterizations in Lara, her best friend Jonah, the aforementioned villain Dominguez, and Unuratu, the deposed queen of the isolated Paititi village. Unuratu's arc is laser-focused on one theme. Everyone is responsible for choosing their own destiny, but it fails to find purchase on any of the other story elements. No one in this story feels bound to a destiny, and those that do embrace it willingly. Thankfully, Lara, Jonah, and Dominguez share a stronger central theme. Obsession blinds you to your own weaknesses and the consequences of your actions. Lara Croft is obsessed with vengeance for her father's death at the hands of Trinity. This leads her to desperate sacrifices, those her own and those around her. In perhaps the best moment of the story, Jonah shouts down Lara, who, despite having seemingly unleashed a tsunami on a Mexican town, is desperately trying to leave immediately to chase down Dominguez.
No one is safe! Not if he gets the box first! I have to go! I'm the only one!
You're the only one that can what? You don't know that you caused all this, Lara! Not everything is about you! These people need us here. We can do good now!
In fact, there are a handful of excellently acted and voiced scenes that make Dominguez more than a villain. They manage to make Lara's actions seem at least as villainous. After all, Dominguez is actually a native of Paititi, the village he's trying to protect from being annihilated by outsiders.
Unarutu, dream for a moment. How will Paititi prosper when dawn comes in a world without threats coming from the outside?
Aren't you such a threat? Remake the world? We all create destiny, together as we are.
I have lived the outside world, and I have seen what's to come. Every day it encroaches. Paititi will not survive its invasion. Everything we are will be taken or destroyed.
Lara, on the other hand, is entirely unconcerned with anything but stopping Dominguez and his Trinity organization. Ultimately, that boils down to looting the supernatural treasures before Dominguez gets a chance. The truth is that Lara doesn't really care about the ancient cultures that she's literally raiding the tombs of. While Lara definitely becomes close with individuals of the groups, she's uninterested in preserving their way of life.
It never occurred to me that you would just take.
The people actually living in the places that Lara visits are never benefited by her. She's not their protector. She's an avenger, blinded by obsession. According to Dominguez, her father was similarly blinded by the possibilities of revealing Paititi to the world.
Your father was brilliant.
He was taken from me before I could know.
He was my friend. But he was obsessed, relentless.
You didn't know him.
He refused to see the potential for destruction in his work. He had to be stopped. He was going to lead the public to Paititi. Everything I love, everything I fought for. My world would have been destroyed.
And what about my world?
You can't think it's the same.
This contest of wills ultimately comes down to who can obtain a dagger and a box. Dominguez will use these items to remake the world without weakness or fear. The specifics of this are never really important. While Unuratu wants to use it to bring back the sun after the coming eclipse, largely leaving everything the way that it is. If neither achieve their goal, the world will be destroyed by the Mayan god of creation and destruction. It's difficult to relate to Lara when Dominguez, by all rights, has far more at stake in his quest than she does. Nevertheless, Lara eventually succeeds in defeating a nearly godlike Dominguez and is tempted to remake the world to bring back her family. This is a powerful moment for the character, but deeply undercut by the fact that she completed her quest for vengeance just moments prior. Lara acquiesces to her own human sacrifice at the hands of her Yashil counterpart, and is inexplicably saved by white light, negating the need to find another lead for the sequel. I have no doubt that many elements of these story and mysticism are expanded upon in in-game lore as side quests, but this content is best used to enhance a story, not as a means to make an incoherent finale make sense the first time. Lara has one final moment after the credits roll. Her vengeance complete, she has fully taken on her father's inheritance and settled into the Croft home, added her relics to the pile of cultural theft, and thanks her upstanding British butler for tea. She says, "You can't live your life if you're trapped in the past. It's just a shame that the life she's chosen to live is her father's." There is a singular, overwhelming theme to Shadow of the Tomb Raider's mechanics. Everything in the world exists to make you stronger. Enemies exist to be brutally murdered for experience, almost all of which are local people of color, by the way. Living creatures exist to farm resources from, artifacts exist to complete metagame challenges, treasures in the homes of the living and the dead exist to be collected, and tombs exist to reward you with new skills. This is a difficult problem that many games face. Players want every action to result in forward progress. This makes the player feel like every action they take is rewarded. However, it means developers must sprinkle activities, challenges, and loot everywhere, like breadcrumbs the player hoovers up. For instance, in an early mission, the player is given a challenge, which are additional goals the player is given for extra rewards when playing through a section of the game, to destroy 5 death whistles. In other words, the player is traveling through a tomb with the explicit instruction to destroy the delicately crafted chimes that someone put there centuries ago. Even the game's many puzzles usually involve destruction of cultural artifacts to progress. In fact, virtually everything Lara does causes destruction. Practically every jump, climb, and interaction results in something crumbling or falling into an abyss. Ancient Mayan bells be damned, Lara needs to reach that next checkpoint. These crumbling objects make each player action feel impactful, as if you're navigating a real living world that you're vaulting through by the skin of your teeth. But this trumps the themes that the aesthetics and the text try to convey. This heightens Lara's apparent disrespect for the culture she visits, as the player is encouraged to loot precious gems from tombs, sell them to the local merchant, and then buy military assault rifles. It doesn't make any sense to the text or the aesthetic of the game. But that doesn't matter, because it's part of the player empowerment feedback loop. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is successful in using its tools to convey some themes, but fails to integrate them together in a meaningful way. The aesthetic themes extolling the value and relevance of ancient and modern cultures, different from our own, are deeply undercut by Lara's explicit indifference to cultural preservation, and the game's insistence that the player destroy, loot, and shoot their way through them. The textual themes of moving past obsession with vengeance falls flat, when through the gameplay, the vengeance is achieved anyway. Had Shadow of the Tomb Raider weaved together these themes in an internally consistent way, left behind the harmful tropes, and focused on a single core theme, the game could have been far more resonant, allowing the incredible artwork and solid gameplay to be a memorable experience worthy of the cultures that it cribs from. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a good game that I enjoyed playing and studying, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it to fans of the genre or devotees of the visual arts. But it's important that we can critically analyze the games that we make and play. These criticisms come from a place of great affection for this medium and a strong desire to see it improve. Thank you for watching.